Monkey.
Hey, what's going on, guys? This is AndrewChicken, and welcome back to another video. If you go to the Reddit Discord server, r/Paladins, and you head on over to the bot, which shows you match stats for all the different champions in Paladins, and you look up which champions are doing the best in Ranked right now, you'll see a few interesting results. Torvald's doing really well, 57% win rate, Nyx, 56% win rate, and then at number 3 is Skye, with a 56% win rate. She's ahead of Buck, who has a 54% win rate, but way fewer picks because he's very situational. And then we have more typical champions: Inara, Furia, Drogos, Tyra, Grover, all the typical champions you would expect to be up here. Why is Skye here? This makes absolutely no sense. But you might be saying, well, hold on, isn't this just general ranked stats? Yes, it is. This is for all players in ranked. So obviously that must mean, oh, Skye is just farming a bunch of gold players, right? Well, no, because if you go up here, and you look at the rank for the highest rank, which is Diamond Plus, then you'll see, okay, Rom has a ridiculous win rate, but he's been picked 47 times. That is unreliable data. Buck, well, very low pick rate, but very high win rate. Buck's actually doing really good. Torvald, yeah, similar pick rate, similar win rate. And then there's Skye with a higher pick rate than Torvald in ranked, 289 bans, and a 61% win rate. Her win rate actually goes up in high elo. What is going on here? This makes absolutely no sense. Isn't Skye supposed to be really bad against experienced players? That's been the case for many, many years now. But it seems like her time has finally come, and she's actually a pretty decent champion right now. So today, I want to dive into why I think that might be the case, because there are a few reasons, namely some buffs, which have really affected her in a pretty drastic way. Now, before we get started, I want to mention that I'm trying something a bit different for this video. This is another sort of mini guide, which I guess is what I'm just doing nowadays on the YouTube channel, and I made a poll asking whether I should try to record the gameplay and then comment over it later, so that way I can focus on the gameplay and have really good gameplay running in the background, and then be able to focus on the commentary without also having to try and play a match, and hopefully it'll make both more cohesive and more coherent. I'm not sure how it's going to go. I guess we'll see once this video is on YouTube if it's a good strategy or not, but that's why I'm not actually going to be doing live commentary over the match that you'll be seeing in just a moment. It'll just be some Skye gameplay I gathered, which honestly went pretty well. But yeah, let's talk about why Skye is actually a really good flank right now, and it does not make sense for me to say that, but I've even been seeing her banned in my ranked lobbies recently, and I am currently in Diamond 5. And they are being banned in matches where I'm not even the one banning. People higher ranked than me are banning. It's a wild, wild world we live in, but there are some very good reasons for why she is all of a sudden everywhere in the meta right now. And one of the first premier reasons for that is ranked crossplay has made the meta very, very strange for us keyboard players, because we're seeing all these champions pop up that we are just not used to playing against. Koga, Talus, Lex are the rock stars of the controller meta when it comes to flanks. And that's because they're hit scans, and hit scans perform really, really well on controller because of the power of aim assist. Aim assist basically locks you onto the target and makes it a lot easier to hit headshots on them and generally just hit them really consistently. Even sometimes you can be more accurate than what you can even achieve on keyboard and mouse, because the computer is literally doing the aiming for you. So it is a very, very powerful tool, and it makes hit scans really good, but it also makes projectiles pretty hard to play because it locks you onto the enemy. It doesn't really allow you to lead your shots that well, because to actually lead a projectile, you have to aim where they're going, not where they're at. Aim assist makes you aim where they're at. So it results in a dynamic where on controller, you pretty much only see hit scans, and on keyboard, well, you can do projectile play a lot easier, and hit scans are actually a little bit less effective than they are on controller. So it's a very, very weird dynamic. But Skye is no exception to that rule of hit scans being really good on controller. She is a very pinpoint precise hit scan with very high close quarters damage, and that makes her a dream for controller players. And in my opinion, she honestly handles a little bit better on controller than I would say either Talus or Lex does, because she doesn't have any sort of screen shake, and she has absolutely no recoil. She's just like Koga in that aspect. And that honestly makes aiming ridiculously easy. You don't really have to think, you kind of just walk around pointing your controller at people. So that is reason number one. Controllers make Skye a lot better. Controller players are in ranked now with the keyboard players, and so Yeah, it takes us by surprise, and it's very, very weird. But that's not the only reason why she is performing so well right now, because if we took Skye from a year ago and put her into ranked right now, she'd still be trash. The second reason are the massive buffs that she has gotten in 2023. I actually made a video towards the start of the year talking about why Skye is absolute trash and why she needs to be fixed. And, well... It's funny, because I still see comments on that video talking about how I'm wrong, and it's like, well, yeah, you're playing with buffed Skye after the video came out. One of my suggestions from that video actually made it into the actual live game, and I'm very happy to see that. One of the buffs she got recently, which is the buff I'm actually referring to, is the buff where she now has a passive movement speed increase while she is invisible. And this allows her to traverse the map much more effectively, and it also reduces her reliance on movement speed cards. However, if you do combine it with movement speed cards, she ends up going at Mach 10, just zooming around the map, and it is crazy. So, Skye has a card called Dissipate, which increases her movement speed by 40% for 2 seconds after entering Smokescreen. This by itself is a really, really good card. One of the best cards in the game, actually, especially if you're on Smoke and Daggers, because it applies to your teammates. But this card now gets to stack with the 30% movement speed increase that she gets passively while being invisible. And while you might think that adds up to 70% movement speed, which would be insane, it actually doesn't. And to see what it really adds up to, we can go over to the diminishing returns calculator, which I'll have linked in the description. There's basically a whole complicated thing in this game where if you stack multiple sources of the same buff, they get a little bit less effective. I talk about it in my diminishing returns guide. If you want all the details, go watch that. But yeah, let's go ahead and type in the values. Check that it's for movement speed and do 40 and then 30, and you can see that we actually get a nearly 60% movement speed increase, which is still absolutely bonkers. That is a crazy amount of movement speed. And what this buff has allowed Skye to do is finally have some form of mobility. It doesn't give her a dash, it doesn't give her vertical mobility, it doesn't give her really something that's like traditionally effective at dodging, right? Like an EV blink or a Maeve pounce or something like that. But it still makes her so gosh darn fast that when she pops invisibility, she can get the heck out of wherever she is in danger from and escape danger a lot more effectively than she used to be able to do. It also means that if you're trying to predict Skye's movements while she's in stealth, it's going to be a lot harder, because she's going to go from relatively normal movement speed while she's visible to insane hyper movement speed while she's invisible. Is going to throw off your tracking, and it's going to make her hard to hit. It's actually quite a substantial buff. It is a really, really big deal. And so when you stack these two cards, it is insane. But it gets even more insane because they gave her a second buff that makes this super, super reliable. And that is, they gave her a second charge of Smoke Bomb. So this card applies on Smoke Bomb, not on her main invisibility. She now has 2 charges of this card that stacks on top of her passive movement speed. So she can get this movement speed pretty much whenever she wants. It's really, really insane, and this gives her some insane traversal, just crossing the map. It gives her insane ability to actually get out of danger, and it even gives her some ability to dodge some attacks if the enemies are not able to predict her. So this is actually a really powerful buff for her, and when you combine that with the aim assist, allowing her to continuously, easily track people while zooming around at that level of movement speed, you can start to see why she's gotten a major boost to her win rate in the past few months. This also helps Skye out in another way, because one of Skye's major weaknesses has always been that she has absolutely terrible range. She has some of the worst range out of any character in the game, period, because her fall-off curve is so steep. And having increased movement speed allows her to actually get in close a lot more effectively. It's just like Vaatu, right? If Vaatu didn't have his mobility, then he would be doing absolutely 0 damage. But because he's allowed to close the distance and get close to a target, his damage becomes insane. Same thought process for Skye. And so this effectively was also, you can kind of think of it as a damage buff. And it's a damage buff too, because you're also able to dodge attacks better, and it means you're not dying as much. That's also kind of a subtle sort of effect that this might have. But it gets even better due to some of the existing stuff Skye already had that just compounds on top of these buffs and makes her even better. And one of those other things is the card Healing Vapors, which allows her to heal for 625 health over 2 seconds after entering Smokescreen, which is effectively more like 300 healing per second. And this card, now that she has 2 smoke bombs, has a lot better uptime. And this card, due to its scaling, is actually one of the better healing cards in the flank class. This card allows her to be much more independent from her team than other flanks can be, right? She isn't nearly as reliant on her healer anymore because she can just pop a smoke bomb and heal back up over the span of a few seconds. But if you wanted to stack it with a Jealous Mark, or a Grover Blossom, or anything like that, then hey, I guess you're just unkillable now, without any sort of cauterize. So, yeah, this card scales really, really well with the fact that she has 2 smoke bombs now, and has really good uptime. And when you combine that with the fact that she's harder to hit now, it's a snowball effect, where these buffs make everything about her just so much stronger. One last existing thing that Skye already had that got better with these buffs is the fact that she has pretty darn good tank damage. With Debilitate, you increase the damage done by poison bolts and increase the rate at which they do damage. It also has a really low cooldown if you build it right, and it is able to do percent-based damage, so it's able to do more damage to tanks than it is against squishies. This means that she's actually able to battle tanks reasonably effectively, right? You combine her self-sustain with her movement speed, with her really high close quarters damage, with her percent damage. Yeah, she can actually take on a lot of tanks pretty effectively. While she still might not be able to take down Inara by herself, or Nyx by herself, she's at least able to put some pressure on them when she's needed. And she can also play around her own off-tank and really help them out when it comes to dealing damage. So she actually plays really well with off-tanks too. And all of this put together has ended up making her one of the best flanks in the game if you just look at the win rates. She's still not the most picked character, but she's banned a lot more recently, she's picked a lot more recently, she has risen through the ranks and is good even in high elo now, which it pains me to say that, as someone who has pretty much just accepted the fact that Skye has always been one of the worst flanks in the game, because she was that way for literally years. Yeah, it feels wrong to say it. But we have to face the facts now. She's had a high win rate for months now. This is not a recent phenomenon. This has been going on since actually before I made my top 5 videos for this year. So, yeah. It's really crazy, man. It's absolutely crazy. One last thing about Skye, though, that's actually a pretty interesting dynamic, is the situation regarding Illuminate. Because Illuminate is an item that directly hard counters Skye. It makes it so that you can still see her when she's invisible. And if you can see her, doesn't matter how fast she's moving, you're going to have a lot easier time hitting her. And this item is weird, because on the one hand, yeah, it actually does hurt her pretty hard. But she's still able to have that movement speed and kind of get away. So it's not like the end of the world for Skye like it used to be. But it also, in a weird sort of way, hinders the enemies. And it's sort of a weird thought process, right? So hear me out. If you're buying Illuminate, then you can't buy another item, right? You are sacrificing one of your 4 limited item slots. And you're sacrificing credits that could be spent upgrading other items to specifically counter Skye. So let's say you have Skye on the team, and then let's say you have, oh, I don't know, Bomb King. If you buy Illuminate to counter Skye, then you're not going to buy Haven right away to counter the Bomb King. Or you're not going to buy Wrecker right away to counter one of the shield tanks. And so you're sacrificing some effectiveness against other characters to specifically counter her. And now that she's a bit more resilient to Illuminate, because of these movement speed buffs, it means that you're almost, in a weird way, like, you're kind of forced to buy Illuminate, but at the same time, it kind of hurts you. Because then the other characters on Skye's team are able to be much more effective, right? They're still able to buy Haven, Wrecker, all the items that they need, Rejuvenate, etc., and they're able to get those online faster than the team who has to counter Skye with Illuminate because they're busy throwing their items into that, or they're busy throwing the credits into that item. So that is one kind of last thing to think about with Skye, where Illuminate, yeah, it definitely does counter her. No denying that. It does make her less effective. But at the same time, she's not as penalized by it as she used to be, because she still gets those movement speed effects. It doesn't matter if the enemies can see her or not. And it makes her teammates a little bit more effective against the enemy team as a result. So that is one kind of last thing to think about as well when it comes to Skye. But we can still also talk about the reasons, But we can still talk about some of Skye's shortcomings, because I still wouldn't consider her to actually be the best, very tip-top flank in the game. I still think she has her shortcomings that would make other flanks stand out more, like Vatu, like Koga, like Talus, like Eevee, etc. And one of the major glaring weaknesses that Skye lacks is that she doesn't have any movement, or any vertical movement, right? If she is playing on Serpent Beach, she cannot get up to the high ground. Same goes for Timbermill, same goes for Stone Keep, same goes for you name it. She has to go around the predictable pathway, which is getting, possibly behind enemy lines to go up some stairs, or go through a portal. And that definitely makes her less effective, right? Because she loses some of the element of surprise, right? If you know Skye has to go up the stairs to face you, then you can just watch the stairs and, well, yeah, what is she going to do about that? And so that is definitely a problem for Skye. The other major weakness, obviously, is her range, but like I said earlier, she is definitely a lot better at dealing damage now because she's able to close the distance a lot more effectively with her movement speed, so that's kind of mitigated compared to the state it used to be. Her ultimate is also pretty bad. It always has been. It does a lot of damage, but the duration of the actual wind-up phase is so gosh darn long that it's almost impossible to actually hit anybody with it. The most valuable thing this ultimate does is it zones out the enemies, it forces them to run away, and it forces them to use their defensive abilities, and that can be valuable. I'm not saying it's not valuable, but there are far better and more consistent ultimates in the flank class, and so that is something that kind of works against Skye's favor, I would say. She also has some massive issues with her talents, because she basically only has one talent, and that's Debilitate. Debilitate is the only one that doesn't really hurt her at all, right? It increases her damage, it does decrease the fire rate, which does mean that she gets less access to the reveal portion of it, because DOTs also are pseudo-reveals, but ultimately it's just a good talent, it's a raw DPS increase. Smoke and Dagger is in shambles right now. Ever since they took away the invisibility from Smoke and Dagger, it's been a trash talent, basically a throw pick, right? It's unplayable. Yeah, it helps your team out, but at that point, why not just play Grok and play an actual functioning character? And this talent has gotten even worse since she got her new passive buff, because it doesn't work on the talent. It only works when she's invisible, so she doesn't get to benefit from that 30% increased movement speed with this talent, which just makes it even worse in comparison to the opportunity cost of not going to Debilitate. So, honestly, this talent really just needs its invisibility back. It's been dead ever since they took that away, and it's so lame. It's so lame, man. So yeah, this talent kind of blows. And then Preparation, it got reworked, and it's an interesting talent, but it's just not good enough compared to Debilitate for kind of the same reason, or not really the same exact reason, but a similar reason to Smoke and Dagger, and that's the opportunity cost is just too great, right? This talent, yeah, it does give you some damage reduction, but it reduces the maximum duration of Hidden, which means you take less advantage of the movement speed passive, and it also makes it harder to actually traverse the map, because when you use a smoke bomb, the smoke effect wears off 1 second after you leave the smoke bomb, so even though it gives you 60% movement speed while you're actually walking around, that wears off very quickly. It means you don't really get super far compared to what you can do with the, 10-second duration of Hidden? It's 8 seconds? Yeah, 7.5 seconds, yeah. So that duration is actually quite a huge deal when it comes to playing Skye. It allows you to lurk and take advantage of distracted enemies more effectively, and with Preparation, you do lose that. Damage reduction is helpful, don't get me wrong, but again, it's just opportunity costs. So these talents are pretty rough. She does still need some attention given to both of these, I would say. And yeah, in the meantime, I guess you just play Debilitate. But with Debilitate, Skye is popping off these days. There's no denying it. She is banned in ranked, she's picked in ranked, she's hovering at the top of the leaderboards when it comes to the win rates, even passing 60% at high elo. Yeah, do not mess with Skye in 2023. It's crazy to see how far she's come, with just a few changes. Just a few changes have put her in such a strong position. It really, really is crazy to see. But yeah, I think that's going to do it for today's video. If you guys have enjoyed, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, and also comment down below what champions you would like to see me cover next in terms of these mini guides, explaining different mechanics, different circumstances in the game. In today's case, it's explaining why a character is actually really strong now, and why we should stop sleeping on her. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Let me know also what you think about Skye. Am I wrong in my assessment of why she has a 60% win rate? Or am I actually pretty accurate about that? Let me know, of course, in the comments. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching. I will see you all next time. Peace out.